So that is the gospel reading, and it talks a bit, and it kind of alludes to this idea that among the community of believers that was emerging, Jesus' disciples, mother and father were terms that were applied beyond just biological family. Jesus is kind of saying to John, who, as I said, is young, he's saying, John, look after Mary as she gets old, I'm not going to be around. John, kind of care for her, treat her like your mum. And to his mum, to Mary, he's saying to John, to her, look after John, raise him, teach him, instruct him in his ways, care for him. And so this kind of crosses biological kind of boundaries, and is Jesus is kind of giving a gift of these two people to each other, which I think is a really beautiful image. And one of our, as you know, if you've been around here, one of our kind of key values, and one of the things that we have set out in our vision, is about bringing life to families. The whole vision you can see down this side on this pull-up banner starts with raising generations of Spirit-filled disciples. That is raising generations of children, new generations, but also generations of adults. I'm a generation, you're a generation. We're all part of this being raised as Spirit-filled disciples. And then more specifically down towards the bottom, as we bring transformation into our community, both in the building and outside of the building, we want to support families, bringing life to families, breaking cycles and being fathers to the fatherless. And I particularly feel excited and passionate about our call to do this, as we realise that more and more, that there is a need that we can meet as a community. But this image of family is a shorthand that we use a lot, and we use in lots of other places. If you're part of a workplace, you might have heard your boss or some of the higher-ups in your business say, oh, well, we're a family, we pull together this place, we're a family. And sometimes that's good. Other times, as you may be on the receiving end of that, you might be feeling like that's your boss trying to get you to do unpaid work, or to cross boundaries that maybe you wouldn't do. Maybe family is a shorthand for, we're going to take advantage of you, instead of what family is meant to be, which is a loving, safe environment. I think in lots of organisations that's the case, sadly, and in the best organisations, the idea of family is used as a really positive thing, a place where we encourage open dialogue, good communication. And if we think about the church with a big C, this church that spans the nations across the whole world, we have lots of problems with this idea of family. Sometimes we use it to excuse awful behaviour. Sometimes we use it to take advantage of each other. And this sometimes happens even locally. And you might be feeling like, yes, this church is our family, but how I experience family in this place isn't one of ease and comfort and rest all the time. And so I just want to own that. We're using a very broken image, a structure, an analogy of family here to describe the church that isn't always kind of exactly how we would want it to be. But we are given this biblical framework for family, not directly through a kind of command to be family to each other per se, but through the language, the familial language that's used in Scripture. The church is kind of referred to as a household, a gathering place, with a kind of duty to care for each other. Through our status in Scripture, again, we're told that we're brothers and sisters, that we're children of God. Maybe you're familiar with the language of being co-heirs, that we are like inheritors of God's kingdom, and that we together, me and you, everybody in this room, we are brothers and sisters who are equal at the table. But the church isn't a biological family, even though it kind of functions kind of like one spiritually. But I also want to recognise as well, before we kind of get into the meat of what I feel like we should talk about this morning, that we all have experiences of biological families, each one of us. And regardless of how great or how difficult your relationships are with your siblings or your parents, we all bring things, baggage, things that we need to unlearn into the room. I just to caveat and to explain from where I'm coming from, I'm massively grateful for my parents and for my siblings. I'm one of 4 siblings. and my parents, who have been together, still together. My mum actually is here, so I've got to watch what I say about her. But both my mum and dad, I'm massively thankful for, and really recognise that my experience is not the experience of everybody in this room. I come from a quite privileged position of having both parents who love each other and have really reinforced how much they love me. But even I, in a kind of very privileged, from a privileged background of parenting, also recognise there's parts of my life, mistakes that mum's made, even if she maybe won't say. Even I would own the fact that no relationship is perfect, and there's an amount of unlearning that I've had to do, both to do with how I relate to my parents, but also how I relate to God and the image of God as parent and father, because of that. So I just want to kind of recognise that that's the case, but I also want to recognise that that's not everybody's experience. Everybody here has an experience, either through absence or presence, of parents, of siblings, that are negative, positive, easy, difficult. It's going to bring up emotion in some way. And so I just want to own that. That's okay to be in this room. That's okay to be welcome into this room. But I just also want to speak from my experience, that my experience is maybe a bit different to yours at times. So hopefully we've figured that out. Now we're going to dive into the two parts of family that I want to focus on this morning. First, spiritual siblingness, which is the relationship of brothers and sisters that we all participate in. And then the relationship of spiritual parenting, parent-child relationships, as we come into the church. Again, something that we are all invited to participate in different ways. But first, spiritual siblinghood. You might be an only child, you might have a family where you don't know your siblings, or you have step-siblings or half-siblings, and again, this is a diverse, there's a whole range of different emotions that come with this. But within the family of church, within this image of family that we are playing out amongst ourselves, spiritual siblinghood looks like a certain way. It's not like necessarily our own experiences of siblinghood. First, the Bible in Matthew 23 shows us that this relationship is an equal relationship between siblings. It's a relationship where no one outranks the other, no one has a special access to God, that you don't have an older sibling who has a special relationship. Everyone is equal in coming to God the Father. Also, another thing that this looks like, this spiritual siblinghood looks like brotherly love, or brotherly and sisterly love, sibling love, which is sincere and deep and from the heart. It talks about this love in loads of places, and one of the key places in John is where it talks about being known by the love we have for each other. So you can recognise a Christian, you can recognise a believer by the love that they show to each other, to other Christians, the way that they interact as a community. And so as we think about this sibling relationship, yes, we're all equal, absolutely we're all equal, and we're all on this level playing field. But the way that we recognise that we're siblings, the way that other people looking at our community recognise that we're siblings, is by how intensely and deeply and sincerely we are loving each other. Then another feature of spiritual siblinghood, as we share this in the church, is in our practical support of one another. Maybe you had an older sibling that stood up for you on the playground. Maybe you had hand-me-downs from your siblings. I don't know what your relationship is like with siblings, but faith is dead. This kind of spiritual practice is dead without actual practice. And what this looks like for siblings in need is that we share what we've got, both practically, but also of ourselves. We open our table, we make room for our siblings, our other. The Bible again says that if we don't do that, then how can we say that we are brothers and sisters if we see another brother or sister in need? And then I want to highlight this specific thing that happens in Galatians. There's a book in the Bible called Galatians where Paul is writing a letter to friends of his, friends that he spent a long time with, and he's instructing them of how to be as a family together. And in this passage, Paul talks about the difference between a load and a burden. Okay, so Paul encourages everybody, every believer, to carry their own load, to put their own bag on their back for the walk of life, to be a responsible, upright person, being able to carry their own load. But he also recognises that some of life is like a burden. Some of life is too heavy to carry by yourself. And so Paul is recognising that, and he says, carry your own load, but bear each other's burdens. So as we look around the room, as we look around at the people that we are brothers and sisters with, we're alongside this kind of side-to-side, shoulder-to-shoulder relationship. We have a responsibility to carry our own burdens, put our own bag on our back in this journey, in this family. But also we have a responsibility to bear the burdens that we share, bear the burdens that others share, and also that we share collectively as a family. And I want to kind of, have an aside at this point and offer a challenge that we're going to cycle back to at the end. I think some of us know that we're brothers and sisters, and we find that easy. And I'm talking about all of us individually, me, Matt, all of you, everybody. We are brothers and sisters. I think some of us know that, and I think some of us don't always share the burden. I think we're okay at bearing the load if we need to. I think we're okay at being our own responsible bag on our back sort of people. But I want to challenge you this morning. Are you bearing the load? Are you carrying the load? Are we sharing the burden that we carry together? Now that might look like lots of different things, and I kind of want to leave that open. But as we look at our brothers and sisters around us, as we look across the aisle, our family members sitting alongside us, this image of family, these extraordinary weights, these extra things, these burdens that we carry, how can you help the person next to you bear that burden? So that's siblings, something that we all participate in. We're all brothers and sisters. Every one of us is a brother and a sister until you get married. It's a good, and then you're not brothers and sisters anymore. Every one of us is brothers and sisters. The next thing I want to talk about then is spiritual parenting. So we've seen Jesus say to John and to Mary, you guys pair up. This is your mother, this is your son. And I want to highlight at this point, before I start talking about parenting, I'm not just talking about the people with biological children. I'm also not just talking about people that are older. I'm not just talking about men or women when I talk about mothers and when I talk about fathers. I'm talking about the role of parent. And what I mean by that broadly is the care that we have for one another. That is not the side-to-side, I want to bear your burden care, but the care that we have for one another that kind of transcends all the age, that transcends the age. The hat that we wear sometimes where we're the wise friend or we're the protective father for each other. And this is something that, again, I think there's an invitation to participate in. So I just want to flag, I'm not just talking about how it is biologically with older and younger. I'm talking about a whole range of different familial relationships. But I am going to talk a little bit and hold the traditional roles of mother and father for a second. But I want to recognise that being a mother isn't necessarily always the role of a woman. Because I think what it means to be a mother is to be caring and nurturing, and men have a responsibility to do that too. So the traditional role of mother that we sometimes talk about is also a job for men to think about doing. And similarly, when we think about the paternal role, the masculine male role of protecting and of instructing and discipline and all those things is also the role of mothers and women. And so again, I just want to blur those lines a bit. And again, using this analogy of family for ourselves, this is not just about people who are old, it's not just about people who have children, it's about everybody and every one of us here taking responsibility for one another. And so, the mother, the role of the mother. Today, Mother's Day, we celebrate the role of a mother. We have this kind of archetypal, traditional role of a nurturer, a comforter, someone that provides kind of empathy in the house, nursing, it kind of looks after the vulnerable. That's kind of one of many roles of a mother in the traditional sense. The mother also, in the traditional sense, provides safety and tenderness, creates a safe space for healing. And the mother also is the place of wisdom. In the Bible, we see wisdom being a woman, but there's also something really profound about the fact that the woman is in the kind of traditional household, the teacher and the kind of the instructor and the wisdom giver to those that are being raised in the household. So we have those kind of traditional roles, and again, a flag. I'm not just talking about women; they're roles that are shared by us all. And then we have the kind of traditional paternal roles. The roles of instruction and discipline, wait till dad gets home, sort of thing. The kind of primary teacher in this traditional sense of the instructions to the children, those being raised to follow the way, a moral kind of boundary and instructor. The father also in the traditional role is the protector, is the shield for the outside world. There are actual biological processes that happen when a man becomes a father and a woman becomes a mother that predispose each other to this. So there are hormones that wake a mum up in the night if there's a noise in the room that they're sleeping in. And there are hormones that cause the dad to wake up if there's a noise outside the window. Which is why, when the baby wakes up in the night and the dad sleeps through it, women can't be annoyed. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. There are biological processes that support this, but the dad is the protector. I always have one eye on the fact that our back gate isn't very secure, and I make sure the door is locked and play that traditional role. But again, Revi is a fierce protector of our children and of me. And so this is not a traditional I'm not laying this heavily on men or women specifically. Another role that fathers and paternal figures play is an encouragement to mature. Again, I feel like I'm saying more about fathers than I am about mothers, even on Mother's Day. But I've done more thinking about what it means to be a father, I think. And one of the roles that a father plays is the father lures the child away from their mother in a way that shows them that the outside world is okay and they can mature and go out and explore, which is just a beautiful gift that a father gives. But again, it's not just the traditional role of a father in that. And so we have these kind of two roles, or this kind of shared parental role to nurture and protect, to share wisdom, to protect, to encourage in maturity. And I want to kind of give us some practical steps to how we do that for each other. And I want to highlight, again, that this isn't an age thing. I feel like more and more I'm taking seriously my role as a father in this household, and my role as a father to father 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds. But also I recognise that I'm a child in many ways as well, in the way that we all are, and that I celebrate the fact that I'm loved on and mothered by 60 and 70-year-olds in this church. It's a beautiful relationship that I think we need to take seriously and recognise that not only do we sit as children for each other, as we parent and care and look after each other, but I also want to take really seriously the responsibility, even as a 31-year-old, to care for and protect, instruct, share wisdom, nurture those even that are older than me. And so I want to invite you all to think about how that looks for you, to recognise that you have a part to play in this, to show up as parent, to let other people parent you at times, and to recognise that we play both of those roles. And so some practical applications. So there's 3 things that I think we could highlight, and I'm just going to highlight these 3 things and then ask basically which one of these 3 are you going to think about, put into practice, action, and work into how you relate to everyone else in this room. The first practical option here is to stop being fixers, right? And to show people how to carry their own loads rather than being a hero. And what I mean by that is, if I chase Simeon around when he's on a climbing frame as a parent and make sure he never ever falls off the climbing frame, if I'm constantly hovering and making sure that nothing ever happens to him. No one's ever mean to him. Any problems, like when he spills a drink, I quickly clean out for him. How is he going to learn how to do those things for himself? If I'm constantly a fixer, jumping in, sorting and solving the problem, if he's not going to be able to sit with the discomfort, which is part of life, how is he going to learn how to do that? And so the loving thing, the invitation as parent and in our sibling relationships is to not swoop in and try and fix it, not try and dismiss the feeling, not try and hurry the conversation along, but to be okay and sit with not knowing. To not jump to being a fixer and to say to the person next to you, that sounds like it was hard, falling off the climbing frame. That's a hard place to be, helping other people to carry their own load, to recognise that that's a good step to take. So that's practical application 1. Hopefully that makes sense. Everyone still awake? Great. That's good. The next practical thing is to widen the table. So we've got don't be fixers, now we've got widen the table. Right? And you can already guess what this is. Big part of a family is the gathering places of family. Your dinner table is a place where things happen. We've somehow taught Simeon to, again, I say somehow, because we didn't set out with the intention of doing this, but we've somehow set Simeon up with the intention, with the expectation that you arrive at the dinner table and you talk about what the best bit of your day was. And so when we sit down, before we've even sat down sometimes, he is there like, what's the best bit of your day? What was the best bit of your day? And it's a great moment to connect. And I love that. I don't know how intentional that was for me, or for me. But then when people come into our house, people from this community, this family, they get asked, what was the best bit of your day? And we talk about the real things that have happened in the day. The table is a place of safety for the isolated. If we're thinking about being fathers to the fatherless, if we're thinking about breaking cycles of isolation and loneliness, if you're by yourself, the table is the place to invite people. Widen the table. It's one practical way of being siblings and of being parents and of being a family together as a church. The third practical thing, the third practical application comes from Proverbs. It's a book of wisdom in the Bible. Really, really recommend you read it. This is where we get wisdom as a woman from a lot of the time. This beautiful image of the woman in scarlet that roams around and shares great wisdom. And in this book, it says that we should train our children, and as they grow, they will know the ways of the Lord. They'll kind of stay on straight paths as we do that. So teach them young, and they'll stay on straight paths. I'm currently building a kind of shed office in the back garden. We've kind of poured cement, and I've done a damp course of bricks, and we're now doing a timber frame, and we're going to do a roof. And there's one analogy that's really similar that might be super obvious to anyone that's ever built anything. But how you start the building process often determines how the middle bit goes and how the last bit goes. The way you plan makes a big difference. So if you order 24 pieces of wood and you actually needed 34 pieces of wood, like I did, you're going to go back to B&Q. That's good. That's just the reality. And it's going to delay the project. If you pour your cement base and you get a millimetre off, that millimetre repeats itself later in the journey. In the middle bit, you're then not just 1 millimetre off, but it compounds the problem. And you're 5 millimetres off. And then when you go to do the roof's not straight. And so then you're 10 millimetres off. Or constantly negotiating and changing. And makes it so much harder. And so we're encouraged as we raise up each other and as we raise up children to pay attention to these early things, these foundational things. One of the principles from coaching, which is the job Roby does at work, is to begin with the end in mind. So think about that flat roof that you want to build. Think about how the middle is going to go. Think about that first damp course of bricks. Think about the conversations you have around the table when they're 2 or 3. What type of adult or teenager do we want to create? What types of adults do we want to help each other be in this space? We need to think about how we do that at a foundations level. We need to set values that help us create the types of people that we want to create. And think about how we do that for our children. How do we encourage our children to engage with church on a Sunday morning? How do we feed them the right things? How do we feed each other the right things? How do we give each other kind words? How do we make connections with each other so that when we are having a hard time, we can build bridges and we can share each other's burdens? How do we do that in the peace times so that when things aren't going well, we can be there for each other? We start at the foundations, these values, we set values, and then the rest of the building goes much smoother. So there are the three applications. The first, stop being fixers. Sit with the person, help them figure it out. Second one, widen the table. Really practical. Get people around, talk to them. Be a normal brother and sister, family member to these people that you're alongside on a Sunday. And then be bold in truth. Be bold in saying these values. Train up children and speak to each other and build connections with each other that enable us to be a community in the way of Jesus.